Stand for Pledge Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Roll call.
Maria Mills Benet.
Here.
Bo Bophamy.
Yes, ma'am.
Tom Jordan. Lance Green.
Is here.
Newton White.
Here.
Stan Schmidt.
Yep.
Chair John Junko.
Here. Okay.
Tom have a note?
Yes.
Okay. Teachers pass.
Are we good? Is he good? Okay. Okay, so application LDC text amendments, chapter 2, 15, 16, 17, and 18, case number 21-25000004. And it's all yours, Tim.
All right, thank you, Tim Berman, Community Development. We spoke to the Planning Commission, I believe it was back in March, and kind of gave a brief overview of the sign code updates that we'll be bringing forward. Those have been now completed in the draft form and have to basically bring the full official text amendment before the Planning Commission to get a recommendation to move before City Council here then. So this is the official text code amendment. So just want to go through some of those changes that we talked about last month, and then a few of them in a little bit more detail as we flush through some of the issues with them and also some of the requirements then. So basically the intent of our code is to make sure that the signs that are installed in the city, there is basically within roadway safety, building safety, also maintaining property values and enjoyment of the city then. That's kind of the intent that we had for the previous code, carried that through forward on this code. As we talked about, reason why we're updating this, the main force driving this is a Supreme Court ruling. It's the Reed versus Town of Gilbert, which basically said that we have to shift all of our sign regulations from being content-based, such as gas station requirements have this, churches have this, yard sale signs can be for this amount of time, real estate signs for this amount of time. We have to be more content neutral. And I've got a slide here that kind of goes over what content neutral means in terms of our sign code and how we had to kind of draft this ordinance through. We also took the opportunity here to try to improve upon the code in terms of removing some conflicting and unclear regulations that were challenging for staff to enforce and administer. That's kind of why there's the sections or chapters listed in the LDC amendment for chapter 16, 17, and 18. What we had there was we had sign code requirements embedded in those chapters which did not match exactly what was in chapter 15. So we went through and pretty much cleared all those out and referred those to chapter 15. That way when changes are made, you're not basically not forgetting to change another chapter that you wouldn't think about, and also too to make sure that all the requirements are condensed into that one chapter 15 then for ease of not only staff but also sign contractors and also residents then. Also, we talked about providing some more flexibility and creativity to signs in the area, and based off of feedback that we've seen from business owners, along with specifically along Ridgewood, and also to some of the business owners we've seen on our arterial collector roadways, which have asked for basically kind of the digital sign as an option then moving forward. So we've looked into that then. And also too, to continue to regulate signs that impact the community then. So basically the content neutral sign requirements. That kind of basically, like we said before, our code was kind of structured as to this specific sign can be for this time frame and have these requirements. We've had to change from that. Now our regulations are based off of minimum or maximum number per lot parcel. We can also do specific locations within the visual clearance triangle to regulate where signs go. Within certain zoning districts, such as you can have this sign in only residential areas. You can only have this sign in non-residential zoning districts. Along corridors, along roadway types. Also too, the materials, lighting and form. And period of use, we had to go with uniform time frames. And in some cases, we have some temporary signs which would have no time frame, but are required to be in a certain maintenance standards then. So this is kind of what we did, a pretty good shift from our current content-based code to a content-neutral code, trying to keep a majority of what that original code had in place then, and kind of just make the shift is what we did with a few changes along the way, which we'll get into more detail here. First is the prohibited signs. There has not been really much of a change at all in terms of what we have prohibited. We basically have just kind of took those content-based codes and made them content neutral then. One thing too, just to kind of point out with last year, I believe at this time, due to the COVID situation, there was more of a relaxation on some of our sign regulations. That's why a lot of these things that you see around town for the past year, such as the feather flags, also the banners in front of the restaurants that are not properly secured, sandwich board signs along the right-of-way, is why you started seeing more and more of those come to businesses within Port Orange. That's, I believe it's the executive order is still in effect right now. The intent is to, as we get this closer to council and approval, is to kind of set a date where that will since expire and this will take in place. And basically we will be going back to our old regulations that were here, which we basically restricted the feather flags. We basically did not allow the signs within the right-of-way. The banners had to be attached to the building or secured tightly along the roadway then. So there wasn't much change in terms of what we were prohibiting. It pretty much stayed consistent. We just updated it to be content neutral. Exempt signs from permitting. This again, there was not much that changed in here. Essentially, flags were always exempt, except for the flagpole, of course, requires a building permit. But your public signs there, basically that the government puts up, then those are still exempt. Wayfinding signs. Also, too, there's no need to get a sign permit if you are putting up a real estate sign that is 6 square feet or less. That's still exempt from the code. So again, the exempt signs was just more of cleaning that up, making that more consistent with kind of today's terminology, and getting rid of some of the content-based items that were in there. Next, we looked at sign measurements. A lot of our sign measurements were either written definitions, and those can be interpreted differently from different staff members, also from contractors and business owners. So what we look to do is basically not only match our definitions, but also include some graphics to kind of show exactly what that definition was referencing. So, up at the top left corner here, you've got basically the sign height that we use. Essentially, it's measured from that the ground elevation of the lot then, or in the cases where the ground elevation is a lot lower than the roadway, you can basically measure from the road elevation there. So that kind of matches that one paragraph definition with an illustration, so someone can kind of read the definition, but also see what that illustration is below then. Also too, how we identify sign area, clearly showing how you draw the shape around there to determine the sign area. All these were basically described in the old code, but we feel basically having these graphics helps in terms of the enforcement, and also when people are reviewing the code there to see exactly what that definition is referring to. There's no gray area in terms of what is allowed as sign area, what is not sign area. We also kind of clarified some of the sign design and location criteria. The location criteria, for the most part, we kept the same. We had one situation where we had every sign that we had in our code, we had some type of location criteria, and we removed all that and basically just had one section at the front of the sign code chapter that says refer to chapter 16, which sets all our setbacks and visual clearance requirements. That way there's no confusion as to what those are then. Also too, the different types of lighting sources that could be done then. We clarified that. Essentially the top up there, you've got the external lighting, you've got the halo lighting, which is the red brick pizza, and we've also got the cabinet lighting, which is shown on the public sign down below there. The neon sign is still permitted as part of the window sign. We kept kind of there was a square footage limitation on that window sign for the neon then. That was consistently across there brought over then. Again, we just kind of provide the pictures that go along with the terminology being used throughout there. One thing that was initially kind of unclear whether it was permitted or not permitted in the code was the use of the string lights for the outdoor dining area. We clarified that says basically if it's part of an outdoor event area or a dining area and it's part of an approved site plan, building permit, or subdivision, then it is allowed to be part as installed then. With COVID, we've seen a lot of people go with the outdoor seating areas and use this scenario. I think Coastal Bar and Grill did a good job of that. and we want to make sure that is something that can be done with the proper oversight to make sure it's not out of control then. So we've added those requirements in the code to allow that to move forward then. Next was where some of the additions to the sign code happened, and some of the clarifications was on the permanent signage types. Essentially, we've had the monument signs. We kind of clarified those requirements in the code there, make it a little bit more stricter requirements on the materials used for the sign bases. Also, too, we've allowed for the option of having the sign base as a kind of the base monument you see throughout Port Orange, but also to give the option for the columns to be used, such as coastal sign there with the decorative columns. We want to have that flexibility there on that then. So we added that. The one that's kind of purple is the first new one we had, and that is because it's specifically on Ridgewood Corridor, and I think I've got a slide here. And we kind of talked about that previously. A lot of times we run in with Ridgewood, and why we see a lot of temporary signs that are put up there or signs that are not permitted is they just don't have the space to put the sign up, nor does the business owner have the money at that time to invest in a sign that's required by code in terms of basically a 32 square foot sign there. So we wanted to give some options here, so we kind of created the post sign. This allows for either the single post with the hanging sign or the kind of the two posts there with the sign base there, but not requiring substantial columns there. We feel this basically allows for a narrower sign on more of a smaller lot then, and it could be beneficial to properties along the Ridgewood corridor there as they develop as another option for signage site. They can clearly use the standard signs that we have with the base in 32 or 48 square feet, but this just gives an option for when that's restricted or they don't have the funds at that time to secure one of those signs then. And again, that would just pertain to properties at this point on the Ridgewood corridor. We clarified the residential subdivision signs. Before, the subdivision chapter or subdivision sign requirement was basically essentially said it was up to the administrative official to determine whether it was consistent with the code or not. So we decided to put some actual regulations in there. So we had something to go from on there. It's pretty much consistent to allow what you see on all of our residential subdivisions and those entry signs that are put there. We allowed it basically at the points of entry off the public roads, and also to put a restriction or put some information there too to allow for within a subdivision, if there are certain phases of that subdivision that want to have their own identification sign, for that to occur then. So we kind of looked at what has been installed in the past and made sure that our code now essentially allows for that to happen. Vehicle display, that's basically a fancy word for a menu board sign, but we couldn't specify for a restaurant menu board sign anymore. So that pretty much displays to any business with a drive-through is able to have a vehicle display sign then. So that would pertain to a bank, to a fast food restaurant, to anything that has the CVS with the drive-through pharmacy. All those basically kind of fall into being able to have that vehicle display sign, either a monument sign or a sign attached to the wall, depending on kind of the design of the building. The last one here, the incidental freestanding sign, that really came out due to last year with COVID and everything shifting to the drive-up pickup at Walmarts and Targets, and a lot of that there, you see a lot of those signs popping up there. Those weren't really fitting a criteria because we never kind of had planned for that to happen then. So we put a category in there and square footage amount to allow for those signs to be captured so we can regulate how much is getting put on those properties there. That also applies for basically the directional signs in and out of the site to basically direct you through the drive-through or to the drop-off area then. So we captured that in the code. Again, clarifying awnings and canopies have always been allowed, but there wasn't a lot of specific language in there. So we added that into the code. We clarified murals, so there's actually requirements for the murals for on buildings then. We've had one that basically came in along Ridgewood Avenue already, but we want to actually have some clear language and clear requirements there as moving forward on those. And the last one that's kind of different that I think we talked about was the light pole sign. This would be on any parking lot, walk light, or street light that's on private property could have the ability to put some signage on those poles. They have to be the decorative street poles, and they also have to be through an approved building permit or subdivision permit then. So those are just, a few of the highlights on the signs there that we have allowed or changed or again modified. And we kind of talked about this one already being just specific to the Ridgewood corridor at this moment. So the sign standards, how we kind of categorize was to kind of create district areas. So we essentially created the residential, which essentially is any property that is zoned residential single family. It fits under that category. The multifamily institutional, that's all your multifamily zoning districts, along with kind of your GPU, where you might find your churches and your kind of your institutional uses have their set category then. Then we have commercial, which involves all our commercial zoning districts. We have MXU, which would be for our mixed use districts. We have 2 to 3 mixed use zoning categories. At this point, we have not had any developments use those zoning districts. So what we did was we wanted to create the category and at least put a base starting point there. We assume once someone comes in with the development and we get a little bit more idea as to what the signage needs are, there could be a sign code amendment to modify those, but we wanted to at least put the framework in for that then. And then also we had the RC, which is the Ridgewood corridor. There are some signage requirements here that we've allowed for more signage on Ridgewood corridor as another way as to help those businesses out because of kind of the unique situation with the properties, and also just, as we try to encourage redevelopment there, want to give them a little bit more option in terms of signage then. Such as this one here, we've allowed for more sign area on the awning face because that might be the only type of signage they get. And then we'll speak a little bit more about some other later on regarding Ridgewood then. So we essentially, all those sign types have their own category, like category table such as this, along with kind of the picture and graphic to kind of show what we are referencing when we're applying to that then. And like we said too, it's kind of in those categories, so if we do have to go in there and amend something, either increase or decrease, the way the format's set up, you can easily make a change if you needed to on one of those sign categories without kind of interrupting or distributing basically the whole entire sign code. Digital signs. This has been something that we've heard quite a bit from on the business community side of single tenant operators, mainly to be able to advertise specials throughout the day. Also advertisement, the biggest one is the help wanted signage then. So looking right now, like we said, we have signage requirements currently on the books that allow for the LED signs for shopping centers to advertise tenant spaces only. There with specific requirements. Those are about 12 years old. So in general, the technology has changed quite a bit since then. So we wanted to update the technology, which we did in this one. Basically the LED screen is basically a pixel pitch is how close the bulbs are together then. It gives you a more clear, crisper picture. Our code currently requires them 16, I think it's mm, basically so it's a pretty good distance away. What we're looking to do is propose basically it be to 8 mm, so that's a more tighter concentration of the bulbs then, which would give a more clear picture if these LEDs are installed then. Again, to improve the characteristics then. So what we've proposed here is essentially requirements that would allow for digital signs on any property that's located on an arterial roadway. And I'm just going to jump to this slide here to show you. These are basically the roads within Port Orange that are designated in our comp plan as being arterial roadways then. So the first category is if you're on one of these roads, you are eligible for having a digital sign. The next step to look at then too is that only those properties that have the commercial zoning would be allowed to have it then. So a subdivision would not be able to have it. A church that's basically in institutional zoning would not be able to have it. A multifamily development would not be able to have it. It's got to be on an arterial roadway, and a commercial business would have the option too.
So, I'm sorry, in reference to what you just said, that back slide, would that apply to like just one end of Taylor Road? Because most of Taylor Road can be, I mean, other than the high schools, that's a residential, there are houses up there.
Well, we were looking
So
at the,
commercial.
we looked at the comp plan, which basically designates the roads, and that's designated arterial. And that's why we put that other caveat to say basically you could be on arterial roadway, but you also have to have the commercial zoning. So it would essentially eliminate pretty much all of Taylor Road
Okay.
in terms, because all those are residential properties then.
Right.
Same thing, you know, when you're going up through Spruce Creek there.
Yeah, except for neighbors. or
Well, it would
churches.
include neighbors then,
Right.
because that's not
That's
arterial
not-
down that area
Right.
then. But so, yeah, so some of the properties that abut to this would not be granted that because they only might meet one of the criteria
Okay.
on arterial roadway. And then you gotta look at the commercial zoning then.
Yeah, a
Right.
house isn't gonna stick a digital sign out in front of, well, I mean, they
Yeah, I
might
mean, I
want
could
to,
see a
but
lot
they're
of
not gonna
these
get to.
happening, and they are, like in Dunlawton, but Taylor Road was
Right.
kind of
Well, Madeline
mix,
Avenue too,
a
there's
mix
not
of
much
residential.
there.
Clyde Morris between Dunlawton and Taylor, and Yorktown between Dunlawton and Taylor.
Yeah, we tried to do a map here to show kind of, it's taking all the residential out of there, but it just got too busy on that then. So that's why we kind of showed at least the corridors with the understanding that if this would go forward, that it would just pertain to the properties that have that
Our
commercial zoning.
Yep.
The other zonings, you know, the ridge, you know, the multifamily and the residential would not apply in these circumstances then.
So as Yorktown is not even considered an arterial road right now?
It's considered right now as a collector roadway, so you would not be able to have anything on the, you know, the backside of that then.
That's
Like
fine.
Yorktown then.
Really?
So, but, you know, the Wawa sits at the corner of Yorktown, Dunlawton, so it would be allowed to continue having its LED gas station prices then, on that one there. Same thing with a few of these other ones, like there's a gas station at the corner of Madeline and Nova. It fronts onto Nova, so they would still be allowed to have their LED gas station
Right.
prices on that one then. And that's again why we were looking at kind of, you know, before in our code, we had gas station price LED requirements, time and temperature LED requirements, and then we had the shopping center LED requirements. We had to kind of condense them all into one to be the content neutral, and this was the approach we looked at, the kind of roadway and also the commercial. Also too, I think we're able to find some more, again, as the years have gone on, the technology to not only measure the light on these signs has improved, along with the requirements in terms of making sure that basically the brightness is adjusted at day and night, or different basically conditions to the light then. So those would be requirements with these signs, that they have to be able to have the sensors in place to adjust. So basically as it gets night, the sign cannot increase in brightness, it's also got to adjust too there. So those would be requirements here. We've also got basically a better way of measuring the light then, in terms of the, we got here the 0.3 foot candles at the right of way, along with the, making sure that that's the kind of the measurement tools that we have, measures that light then, so that's consistent for the enforcement side, if approved. And the last thing is, the one thing that, we drive by the one at Panera Bread, and that thing looks like it was just stuck on the sign.
That's an
Yeah.
add-on?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we changed basically the code that if you're going to put that, if it goes through and you basically are adding that one, it's got to be integrated into the sign design. These are some examples of the signs that kind of show it integrated into the design, so it's almost the same face, you don't have a stuck-on approach. I believe in the sign code we even put that one as an example with the strike-through to say no, so you know exactly what we were talking about then.
So that picture you showed of Great Clips with the big X on it?
Yeah, that's a
That's
no.
basically just a squared-in light box that's been attached to the sign. Now, what if that sign has an LED function?
That is the
It
LED
is
function.
LED.
Oh, that is an LED
Yeah.
function? Oh, I didn't,
There,
okay.
when we did the first code, that was,
Okay.
we didn't kind of write in there that needed to be
Okay.
incorporated, and that's what we got.
It's a cleaner look.
So we
I
learned
see.
from our mistakes
Okay,
and put that in here, that it had to be incorporated within the sign, and also to, on there then, so.
So how did you say you measure the brightness of these signs?
Basically, the kind of industry is a foot candle, the luminance then. So
Luminance,
yeah,
yeah.
and we kind of working here. We have it's a graph that shows kind of how far to be measured
Does
from
code
there.
enforcement have a device or,
But we
I
made
see.
sure that we have the light meters that basically will sufficiently take care of that
Oh, I
then,
see.
so.
Okay.
Along with, here is basically, I believe we even kind of put in the code how you are to measure it in terms of taking the light reading prior to there, the distance required to be taking that lighting reading from, and then going there to make sure that you have the enforcement done correctly then on that end. So the previous one did not have that much detail, so this one we did put that detail in there for not only for the permitting side, but also the enforcement side.
That sounds like it's gonna be a big job for code enforcement. I mean,
We had that one sign code for like 12 years. I believe
Yeah.
we only had 3 signs that, jumped on it then. And then, as long as, they are installed and properly, the other thing too is that, we've seen some cities that, if this would go through, they require them to basically perform verification and submit as part of their business tax, that they basically had a third party go out there, inspect the sign, and send it back to you part of your business tax renewal to say, yes, the sign meets ABC criteria then. That's something that could be added on to the sign code if it goes through then, to require that then, just as another measurement, and it wouldn't be code enforcement having to do that, it would be we come in and see it then.
Right.
Similar to what we do with surveys, to make sure your setbacks are correct, you have a third party surveyor go out there, verify them, sign and seal it, and go from there then. So that could be
So-
something that's incorporated.
so if a new sign comes in, they apply for it, they have to meet the conditions,
Correct.
and we'll verify that for the permits issued.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Now, are there any existing signs that you're aware of that are definitely grandfathered in prior to these arrangements?
It would be the 3 multi-tenant signs
Okay.
that Dunlawton Village then,
Uh-huh.
or sorry, not Dunlawton Village, but I think Tuscan Village, the Panera Bread
Panera
and
Bread.
Gulfstream. On that then, and then the Culvers had a variance that allowed them
We
to go
remember
forward
that,
there.
yeah, I remember.
But that one just essentially has restrictions, and so those would be the only 3 that kind of had the old LED.
And they'll be fine because they were grandfathered in, they won't have to be updated.
Right,
Okay.
but if they basically choose to make changes, or if, there's changes to the sign to, let's say they wanna put more panels on their
Mhm.
sign or incorporate a larger screen, they would have to comply with all these requirements
Okay.
then. Or if it's damaged.
Well, like is it gonna sunset for them? I mean, if they use the city sign at Dunlawton at the entrance to city center, the technology there is kaput. So if they redo the sign, is there a mechanism that sunsets this that makes them bring the sign to the current code then?
Yeah, if they came in and said they want to put a new LED panel, let's say on a Panera, the panel goes out and they want to put a new LED panel in there, they would have to conform to the current standards if this got approved in terms of the type and the measurement and the requirements then, so they would have to conform it.
So they would be required to get a permit, or
Yeah, they would be required
what
to
if they just keep repairing it, or?
That's what they'll probably do, because they don't want to
Right,
spend
yeah.
money on a new
In order to
sign.
repair that, there could be repairs that they're doing,
Yeah.
on the computer side then, but if they basically have to take the whole entire attachment off, that, be electrical work, and that
Right.
falls into a permit requirement then.
Put it this way, they'll keep it as long as they can.
I get that, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to define, is there any way to make sure that this stuff sunsets, that they,
Well,
the
sooner or later,
useful
you
life
have
of
to
the
hope
sign.
that they're
Soon
gonna
as
want
it's
to
required
replace
permit.
it.
Well, hurricane
have to
come by,
change the
knock the
code.
sign
Yeah.
down. So, it's
Yeah.
what it is, it happens.
And then, we kinda kept still the static 60 seconds, hold time there. A lot of times we see basically these in other cities, they have 8 seconds.
Mhm.
But that was something that kinda set about 12 years ago. So we kept that consistent with the 60-second, hold time there. Also too, the transitions, you can't have all the animation, kinda the guy
Yeah.
running across the
The
screen with it
distraction.
there. It should basically instantly go from, sells help wanted to cheeseburgers $2, instantly change there, on that side then. So those basically, again with a change, that could apply to anything from a time and temperature sign to, the McDonald's that you see here, or the gas station prices then. And we did put in the code, similar to what we had there too, a percentage of the sign face. With the multi-tenant one, we used 25%, and we kept that consistent across the board as 25% of your allotted sign area could be dedicated to one of these LED panels, or digital panels then. And again, this would be a map of possible locations, again, if it meets the arterial road collector, arterial roadway, and also the zoning necessary then. Temporary signs. This is where we got kind of the case got in trouble with a lot of the enforcement then, so this is the one area that we really had to clean up then. So what we kind of created, and I know we kind of talked about it here last time, so just want to kind of go the brief overview, is that we kind of came up with, essentially there's 5 types of temporary signs. The first one, I'm going to try to go in order that they are in that the ordinance that you received, was the banner. Those were always allowed by code. What we basically have done is essentially that they are required to be either on the building itself, as in the one picture, or they can be installed in the front area of the property, but they have to be on essentially 2 poles that are mounted in the ground. They cannot be strung up between trees that we see quite a bit, or landscaping. They also have to be essentially tight, so they're not basically wrinkled up or scrunched, that you kind of see quite a few of them right now on there then. So we put more maintenance requirements and more standards there for those banners on that then. We also allowed for those to be up for 60 days. That's not consecutive days, but basically if a tenant wanted to have 10 of them up over the course of a year at 6 days apiece, they could do that. They'd have to get a permit for each time that they put that up then, but that gives the tenant the flexibility, if they want to do different specials, to be able to have the banner up for that then. We did consistently with what we have in the code currently. We had typically in the past, Ridgewood had more time for banners than the rest of the zoning districts. We continued that. We gave Ridgewood corridor up to 90 days for a banner for those tenant spaces then. So again, the old code did not really specify kind of location or where you could tie them to. This code does provide that information there. So we know they're in the building, or they're going to be installed in a more professional appearance-wise look then.
Is that 60 days annual? Is that
Yeah, within a calendar year.
Yeah, okay.
So
within
you
calendar
get the they get the permit in here, and the staff would be able to look at those permits from 2021 and kind of, okay, yeah, you've got 5 days left out there. You can have it for 5 days then.
Can they change verbiage?
Yeah.
The verbiage would be included in the 60 days?
Yes, if they wanted to put a Christmas,
Yeah.
New Year's Day sale, 4th of July sale, they can change that banner. They just have to provide us with the permit saying this is the banner I'm going to install, and go from there.
But it doesn't make any difference. It's still 60 days, no matter what the banner says.
Correct.
Okay.
What about a commercial, like you have a construction sign? Obviously, I'm talking from experience. The first sign there's a commercial job going on. It'll exceed well more than 8 to 12 months in construction.
You guys just have to go faster.
Yeah. So can you leave the sign up while it's in permitting, being inspected? Do you need to renew that sign every 60 days or whatever you say?
I'll get to that one in a second.
Okay. All right.
Gonna
All right.
kind of got an order in my head here.
Yeah, go for it.
Right on that then. So, but that's kind of the banner stuff. So it was pretty much just tighten up our language with banners. The next was we talked about was the sandwich board sign. Those, it's kind of depending on which chapter of the code you read or how you want to read it. It was whether you could have those or not, and there was really no requirements if you kind of interpreted that you could have it then. So we did create requirements for the sandwich board sign, basically allowing it to be within, I believe, 15 feet of the front door of the business that is advertising. It's also got to make sure that there's clear pedestrian access. I believe 4 feet between the sign and the walkway there, and that's mainly for your ADA requirements. And also to be brought in at the end of the day. The intent is to allow this to be used for the restaurants to do specials. Also, too, we applied it to Model Home Center. So if you wanted to put that sandwich board outside the Model Home Center, that would be another option then. Next one would be your site signs then. This is going to kind of pertain to any site that's going to be really advertising a project's coming soon. A real estate sign for a project. There's basically the time frame for those will basically be the duration of your project then. So if it's a 12-month build, basically after we go out there for your final site inspection, we're going to say
Take it
signs
down.
not be removed within 5 days on there then.
we're very happy to do it at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are
And then
very excited.
It, I think Newton and Bo can give a little bit of terminology on this. Your real estate signs are staying up that long nowadays, but basically it's within the kind of the time that's basically actively being marketed for sale then is when that's to be, up. Same thing for a rent sign too. If you have a homeowner business that's trying to rent then, same would apply then. It kind of, the duration is based off the time that's actively being.
Real estate signs are a week to 2 weeks now.
Yeah,
really.
Takes longer to close them than it does to sell them right now.
So yeah, I don't think we had a really problem with those sticking around the area
No.
too long.
The
Right now.
thing that in the prequel to this, that specifically the little triangle lot at Yorktown and Dunlawton, where the magnolia trees have been slaughtered, and that real estate sign that's there, that's half legible, had vines growing over it, in front of it, and on it, and do you know the sign I'm talking
Yeah.
about specifically?
We've got more maintenance requirements on that one.
Okay.
It still can be there because they are still actively marketing that.
Marketing
We
it.
do get calls on that property.
Yeah.
There, but basically the appearance has to be improved on it because that's been there probably for 7 or 8 years since that property got created. then.
Yeah, and
So-
that's like at shopping centers. There's usually a large shopping center. There's usually always at least one vacancy in there, and ABC Commercial Realtor always has a big plywood sign sitting out front, spaces available or out parcel available, and it's been there for 10 years.
Right.
So, fine to have it, but you're putting in maintenance requirements on it so that it's not going to be an eyesore.
Correct. So they kind of, there, we did do, for your larger signs, the ones that are 32 square feet, they still have to be set back to 5 feet from the property line. But for the real estate signs, since we know that's kind of get them right to the property line essentially for visibility there, that those ones that are for the 6 square feet or less is what we kind of had in the real estate sign. Those don't go into the right of way, but go up to the right of way then
Perfect.
on those then.
Now, on the real estate sign, if they're less than the required footage there, or the allowed footage, no permit required, but if you go with a larger sign,
Right. Well, in the code, to kind of again before we
Does
have
that
to do it,
come-
basically
Okay.
if the lot is less than 3 acres in size,
right?
or less, is basically the 6 square feet for your residential.
Uh-huh.
If it's greater than 3 acres, then basically you could go up to the 32 square foot sign for sale. The reason why we did that is typically because you see the larger tract, if a tract of land is, let's say, 10 acres and it's zoned residential, more than likely it's basically being advertised to be sold to a developer for site plan creation there. Most likely your lots that are less than 3 acres could be your single family home lots that we have on there. So that's what the distinction was between those then. Oh. Where were we? Okay. Well, next one is the is what we were calling the yard sign. This could be everything from supporting your local football team, to garage sale, to your election sign, to open house, to supporting your guy who mows your yard then. Essentially the way the code's going to read is that every residential lot is allowed at any time to have one of these signs up there with no time frame at all to remove it then. We did put language in there that states basically that essentially 45 days prior to any election that you're able to have 3 more signs on the property.
So
They do not have to
four.
be, they do not have to be political. They could be 3 more to support your favorite football team. It's just during that time frame you're allowed to have 3 additional signs. And then we put language there after 5 days after that election, then the signs have to be down to 1 then. So again, for a single family home, basically if it's being sold and they wanted to have a yard sale sign, they could have the real estate sign in there because that falls in the site sign, and the garage sale sign or yard sale sign, that falls under this category here then.
Now, what if these sign rules, city rules, conflict with the HOAs? The HOAs have the final say on their.
If the HOA says only 1 per that's you have to follow the HOA rule.
Okay.
Similar to fencing, we can allow chain link fencing,
Okay.
but if the HOA says it's got to be PVC, that's the HOAs can come down on that property owner to basically kind of more refined restrictions.
They made me change my construction signs. They had to be green. I couldn't even, this is Ormond, but I had to convert signs to green because they didn't like the blues and the orange on my signs.
You in Plantation Day?
That was, oh gosh, Fox. Fox.
Hunter's Ridge.
Hunter's Ridge or
Yeah.
somewhere there.
There's
Yeah.
several subdivisions that require,
They're
a
very
specific sign, and you have to
Yeah.
get it made specifically for.
Yep.
That's for them to do,
Oh,
not for
yeah.
me to do.
That's
Well,
our
yeah.
problem, that's
Well,
our
we're not
problem.
that
Talking about square footage and quantity. The last one is one we see quite a bit with businesses coming in new to a site, where you have basically they throw the plastic cover over the sign, and really there was no requirements on that in the code. So we basically created them. We allow it to happen, but it has to be a new sign or that new face put on there within 60 days. It can't stay there for 90, 100 days then. So we put those requirements in the code then.
Most of them that I've seen were temporary anyway. It's like a change of ownership in apartment complex and they just drape something over it.
Yeah.
So, but we've got requirements that it's got to be tight, it's got to be secured versus kind of this haphazard throw it over there. We want to make sure we allow them to have a temporary, but again, appearance of the corridor. And the last one is just kind of, this is another example of a business here when we talk about kind of what they can have. The ones that are yellow are your single tenants for the most part, but your large tenants. So essentially they are throughout the year the one banner and the 1 yard sign. When you move into kind of your multi-tenant businesses, the way the code's written, it says each tenant can have the yard sign. So where you have like the where the Starbucks is located, I believe we have a total of 4 tenants in that shopping center.
Yeah.
Technically, there could be 4 yard signs out there at any given day.
You mean like 4 tenants in one structure?
Yeah, 4 tenants. Essentially, 4.
Okay.
That one you get 4 tenants in the one lot. Then, so that would be apply there. So if code enforcement goes by, and there's 20 signs on that lot, they are known to contact the property owner to say get rid of 16 of those.
Okay.
That's kind of the enforcement route versus on that we have it.
So no Burma shave signs.
What's that?
No Burma shave signs, like where you have 6.
Oh, I thought you said Berman shave. I thought you were
Burma
talking about
shave.
shaving.
So on the political signs, then this is the new rules for all the political signs?
This would be
6 foot, 45 days before the
which is-
election?
This is what's proposed in. So this is basically, again, the square footage is what is then currently on our code there in terms of the size of the political signs then. And then, the 45 days is, we feel basically, any election, again, that's, could be the primary, would be the one part then the election in the fall, and then also too, in cases where you have the special elections like we just recently have, to be able to allow that then. Again, we couldn't call out election signs, so we basically got kind of creative with that then, and this is the way, again, the property owner does not have to use those for that purpose. He can use those other 3 signs or her for other, other interests.
So you don't have to have a permit on those though?
No, sir.
Like back in the old days, there was like a uniform city-wide
I don't know if
permit.
there might, with the, get with the clerks, I know they kind of might set that up with the register of the election signs, but that would be kind of different there. This is just more of our code, basically identifying the square footage, the time frames, and where they can go.
So there might be another section of the city's regulations that would cover the political signs. Is that
Well,
what?
no, this is covers the political signs. I thought Shelby, the clerk's office, don't they require the candidates to?
Well, yeah, if you run for election, you gotta put up a bond that says you're gonna make sure your
Not in
signs are
Port
picked
Orange.
up. Yeah, in Port Orange.
Yeah.
First time I did,
Yeah.
but the
You
second
gotta-
time then
Yeah,
I
Well,
you
you
have
gotta-
to remove them within
They
5
have to
days
remove
of
them
the
Yeah,
within
you
a
gotta
certain
do the
amount of time.
removal.
Oh, yeah.
I knew
So,
that part.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that stuff's in the code is removal, but the bond stuff would probably
that's a-
be,
that's a
separate
candidate then, yeah.
candidate then.
I don't believe we have a sign bond, but there are rules about.
Yeah,
Okay.
how
we
many
haven't had
per
that for a while.
parcel.
There was,
Finger and you
back in
gotta put
'06
blood
when I
on
ran,
paper.
I had to put up mine.
Yeah, we could get a little bit of that then, but our intent was basically just kind of the number of signs, the size, and kind of when there, and then if there's a bond, then that would be kind of separate, for instance. Again, we are, recommending approval of the amendment to chapters 2, 15, 16, 17, and 18. And like I said, in the past 16 and 17 and 18, we're really removing duplicate language and conflicting language and referring everyone back to chapter 15, where we want to have all our sign regulations there.
At this, is it we're voting on this?
We would
And
need a recommendation.
People from the public are able to come in for this too?
Of course.
Okay, just wanted to double check. So, right now, Lance, you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit, Tim. Again, I've read through this whole thing. This is my pet peeve, but you guys have done a good job at cleaning it up. And if I'm reading it right, And it just goes back to my one pet peeve, which is the size of the sign for the size of the property. And if I'm reading this right, if it's a single building, you're allowed X many square feet on a frontage. If it's a multi-tenant building, you can have X many square feet.
Correct.
So, a building like the Waffle House not gonna have the same size sign as the Publix when they're not the same size building. It's a single tenant versus a multi-tenant, and that's what's now gonna differentiate new signs.
I think on the one for the Waffle House, the big issue on that one, it was kind of the border of it then. Because when you, basically, the way the code is written, that's still, you know, I think basically why that sign looks so big and large is because that brick base that goes around the side of it then. So we did put some requirements in there to basically make sure that the kind of the border around the signs is proportionate to the sign being installed in.
Mhm.
So I
But the
think-
size of the sign needs to be proportionate to the size of the property.
Right,
you
well,
know
I
what
think
mean? And that's what
you know,
we've
yeah,
done
the
here.
sign area, because we have a number of, you know, buildings, you know, McDonald's, some of the McDonald's are only, you know, a couple hundred square feet bigger than the Waffle House.
Right.
And we don't have, you know, their signs are the sign area where the, you know, the Golden Arch is basically the same as the Waffle House sign then. The problem with the
Yeah.
Waffle House sign is that basically they pretty much did the border around there with the brick that went out 2 feet on either side of the sign, which when
Right.
you're looking at it, looks
Magnified
like
it.
Made it that
makes it look
much
like a
more
wall
massive, yeah.
basically on that.
I,
So we tighten up the kind of the architectural requirements to basically in the past to try to prevent that. Again, that's the one sign that we had that got through there, but we did put some kind of architectural requirements in here to tighten that up, not allow that to happen again.
Right.
I think what he's saying, in maybe a little bit different way, is that the signage should be proportionate to the square footage of the business that's got the sign. So like you have a 60,000 square foot store, like a supermarket or retail store, that has a 48 square foot sign, but yet you have a 1,500 square foot cafe that's got a 48 square foot sign. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, you know.
I mean,
that.
just,
You-
I mean,
that's
in
what
terms
I've
of
been
that,
saying for all along.
you know, we don't have that for the multi-tenant side, but once we start getting the building square footage and stuff like that, then it gets very difficult to draw that line of where you can have which size, you know, square footage and make that direct connection, because like I said, the Waffle House, while everyone assumes it's a small area, when you do look at some of our McDonald's around town,
Oh, yeah.
they're similar, and you know,
We don't have one in the city, but like Checkers.
I know,
Yeah,
it just seemed to be different, that it's
I-
a sit-down restaurant versus it's something that's a drive-through. I get it. I do get it.
I think that one, like I said too, is basically the border with the brick, and
Yeah.
also too the way that property sits in too, because the you know, kind of, they didn't get the right of way for that when they did the Taylor Road widening,
Mhm.
so it kind of sticks, the way it sticks out on that curve too. I think there's a lot of factors that went into that sign, which basically
Yeah.
made
You
it
know,
what
like
it is then.
when you catch a fish and you're holding it up for the picture like this, and the guide says, no, hold it out here.
It gets bigger.
It makes
I
it
mean,
look
you can
bigger.
guarantee when someone comes in to redevelop that property, the first thing we're gonna do is try to work with them to reduce the size of that sign.
I might just run it
It's
over.
like the size of the building, that sign.
But no, I think overall, I mean, this really, I think is gonna help clean us up. I like the flexibility on US 1. I think that's very important for US 1, is to be as flexible as we can be with those businesses, because most lots are gonna be non-conforming anyway, et cetera, and to have this flexibility with the signs down there is gonna be important. But now, do you have the flexibility of updating this? Because technology is gonna take 5 years down the road, we're gonna be looking at this again as far as technology goes. And you've got the ability to update this?
Yeah, the way it's kind of written too allows for us basically to, you know, we come back and, let's say the digital item gets approved. We can come back in 3 years and just say, we're just looking at section, you know,
Right.
whatever the section is, we're updating it here.
You're amending it.
Approve
Yeah.
that, and then the rest of the sign code basically it just falls in line with it then.
Yeah.
Same thing with other things too, if it, hey, this, we'd like to have this, you know, this worked out well in Ridgewood, we like to add this somewhere else. Or, you know, this did not work out well, let's get rid of it. We've got the way the sign code's set up is to allow that to go a little bit more cleaner than the last go around then.
That's all I got, John.
All right, Newton?
First, I want to thank you. Done a wonderful job with this. I want to thank you for listening to and seeking out input from the Realtor community. And you also volunteered that if you wanted to come speak, if we wanted you to come speak at the board or something, that would be great. And I wanted to thank you publicly for that. And thank you very much for this. This looks very good. I think it'll help keep our city bright and prosperous as well. And I just one curious question that I saw during the presentation, spotlights and searchlights. Why, I mean, you don't see them, you used to see them all the time. You used to see them at grand openings and stuff like that. Why, any reason that those are on the prohibited list?
Those were basically, in some way, in our older one, kind of listed there then too. I think that the concern on those is basically those can impact residential areas if they're not monitored correctly then. On there with the spotlights, you know, shining there, especially on a commercial property, and you've got residential on the other side. That's kind of why we included that in that area then.
What about it? What about the effect it has on airplanes coming over the area? I
Yeah.
mean,
Years and years ago, Port Orange Family Days used to get a special permit to do it for the carnival,
Yeah.
for the weekend of Family Days. But there were really, really strict rules that had to do with it. And then at some point, I don't even know when, we stopped being able to do that, so.
You remember the one up on the Main Street Pier?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Also too, you know, they go to the roadway, basically interfere
Yeah.
with there. Then a lot of variables that could come in there. I mean, again, if someone wanted, the way the code is written too, there's someone that wanted to do something that's unique there, they come to us in advance, then we could always basically do some type of variance or some type of procedure to come before you guys then to that one-off then. But for the most part, it was to kind of protect, you know, the residential, the drivers, and it just seemed that that could go wrong on that side then. That's why we kind of kept it in the code and kind of further defined it too.
It was just a curiosity. I'm not saying we should have them. It's probably not a good idea to have them anymore, as many airplanes, and they do draw a lot of attention, which was, of course, was their purpose. But thank you. Thank you very much.
You good? Stan?
If you look at the prohibited signs, section 6, and this kind of got me because I was on the way from the office today. I was following this truck from the running board marketing, and it's got LED signs on both sides, and it's got on the tailgate. So it says here that any sign other than a bumper sticker displayed on a vehicle, trailer, boat, yada yada yada, that is used primarily to display the sign. So that's prohibited in the city of Port Orange?
Well, you're allowed to, it goes further into this basically. That sign, that truck that drives around town on the public rights of way is different than basically what our code is saying. We can't really regulate that then, since it's basically a vehicle driving around the public streets then with that sign, and that doesn't, our code doesn't regulate that. What our code basically is saying that essentially is that if you have, you know, a trailer that's advertising a business, it can't permanently be in the front parking lot along the roadway. It's got to be basically, the storage of that should occur behind the front plane of the structure then. Again, if you basically, you know, if John pulls into a restaurant, pulls in the front parking spot to have lunch there, that's perfectly fine for that then. It's that kind of that continuous parking of vehicles to almost be like signs, that we want to make sure that those vehicles, you know, are parked, you know, off, pretty much off from basically the right of way, basically behind the front plane of the building is where we want those stored then.
So this guy, by nature of the fact that he's just roaming the streets,
Yeah.
it was interesting, because it, you know, further it goes on down here, it says vehicle has to display the current registration. And I'm taking a picture of this guy because he's got New York plates on the thing.
Again,
Like,
these would be
okay.
on the private property then, or our regulations there wouldn't be so much the public right of way then.
But it
we-
couldn't be parked in front of a business and just left there, is what I was
Right.
getting at.
We can look into more on that then.
Yeah, there's several.
There,
There's
but-
several of those. There's a couple of trucks that have like a rolling, a banner that slides across.
Yeah, this guy
to the next
changed,
one.
it
Yeah,
changed
this
it.
is
They've
a
got
whole
4
TV
different
set.
things, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see
and
what you're
then
talking about.
there's Daytona Automall's got 3 or 4 of those trucks that has like a billboard on the
Yeah,
back
I've seen
of
those
it.
things floating around town too. This is the first time I've seen this guy in
Yeah,
Port
this
Orange.
is-
It's like, wait a minute.
They live here.
We're gonna go talk about you right
There's
now.
an attorney that always parks on Seabreeze at night with all the bars there,
Mm-hmm.
and he's there all the time. And
I know.
that car is got full of details, so he's doing it, but you know, very creative.
There you
That's
go.
not in Port Orange, just want to
No,
clarify
it's
that.
not. No, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Stan, you got more?
Not really. I mean, they have the section on the handbills too, which is kind of interesting because you always see people shoving stuff underneath the windshield wipers at parking lots and stuff like that. So
That would
that's,
again just carry over from last code. We just brought over with this code then.
Not supposed to do it, still.
yeah,
not supposed
that
to do it.
still gets done. That's it. All right, that's
You good?
it.
Bo?
Yeah, Tim, again, echoing what my colleague said about what you did. This is a great job. I was very concerned about, these signs and how it would affect business, and but the way it's being applied appears to be, complementary rather than creating problems for people. So, and it's part of cleaning up our city and the appearance. I like the idea of giving a little bit more flexibility in the on the Ridgeville corridor down there, because they need help. And I only have one question. What about holiday lighting for businesses? Like Christmas and. is
That's
there-
getting in the exempt stage there, and basically within the time frame, I believe it's got a specific number of days there,
Okay,
total 60 days within a calendar year then,
Yeah.
on that then, so for the signs then, which is perfect for the amount of time that I keep my Christmas lights up.
Okay.
My wife wanted me to change it to 20, but I refused to do that then.
It's called seasonal lighting.
Yeah.
Change the
Well,
season.
you're really bucking the system, but anyway, thank you again. Good job. A lot of work here. I know you had your head down, your butt up for several days now. So good job.
Good? Maria?
No, I have nothing other than good job. I like everything. Everything looks great. Good job as usual.
Because it's a small part of this, it was a huge team up in community development that got it where it is here then. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of staff up there put a lot of work into this.
Well,
It
give
shows.
give
It
them
shows.
kudos
It's
from
crisp.
us, because it's great.
All the signs look that are being incorporated into these codes, they're looking really good, and 77 pages of this stuff must have been quite a monotonous duty, but it turned out really nice, and I'm very pleased with everything. And I think overall, every time I went into a new city driving through, and I've seen signage like that, it always gave me a positive image of that city, and we're incorporating everything that I
Absolutely.
feel
Yeah.
about, like if people come driving through our city and our signage is the way it is now, it's going to complement the city, and I commend you guys on your presentation on this, and it looks really good.
It
So
makes a
that's-
statement
yeah,
about who we are.
it does, it
Yeah,
does.
good.
We take our time, and I mean, we're picky, but it pays off.
Also want to thank you everyone for coming out on a special night then. This helps us keeping it moving to city council then.
Yeah.
So I appreciate everyone coming out on the Monday night then for this meeting then.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
think we were fine with that. It was a good topic. Do we have anyone in the public that would like to come up and say anything in reference to today's meeting?
She can't
No?
walk.
Okay. So I'd like to hear a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 21-25000004.
Second?
And we have a second. Roll call, please.
Maria Mills Bonet.
Yes.
Bo Bofamy.
Yes.
Lance Green.
Yes.
Newton White.
Yes.
Stan Schmidt.
Yes.
Chair John Junko.
Yes. And it's been approved. Moving along, I'm guessing, do we have any commissioner comments? Maria? No?
No, I'm good.
Bo?
I'm good. Thank you.
Dan?
Nothing there.
Newton?
No, I'm good.
Lance?
Yes.
That's the last.
Yes.
We already talked about the Waffle House signs.
Oh, wait, I wanted. Wait, I forgot I wanted to talk about some sidewalks.
Can the Dairy Queen get
Oh,
a bigger sign?
yeah.
No, I'm good, thanks.
We are good. Staff comments?
No comments. We do have, it's starting to fill up on the May planning commission. I think we've got 4 items now. We might get a
Oh,
5th
good.
one then, so.
Okay.
Should we
that'll
bring
be coming
dinner?
out
We'll
towards-
keep
what's
an eye
that?
on our emails.
Should we bring dinner?
You're serving dinner, right?
It will be serving dinner here then, so it'll be Uncrustables and some Capri Suns, but we'll have something for you.
Panera and Waffle House. All right. Do we have any public comments? Okay. Well, then with that being said, I'd like to adjourn our special meeting.
Whoop.